Our cities and communities are being failed not just by the systems in which we operate, the structures of our communities, but also by the lack of imaginative thinking. And this is particularly evident in spaces of urban planning and how we shape and drive our communities, how people access opportunities and how they access services. I'm Ihsaan Gasnolar, the founder of a strategic consultancy called Kembali Consulting, focused on public policy issues, but also about returning to the basics around how our cities, our communities, and how we engage in those spaces and how we deliver change. The focus of this provocation not only touches on the work of urban planners, architects, city officials, consultants, engineers, lawyers, policymakers, but rather it goes to the heart of how our communities and cities are shaped. Public transport is an opportunity to reimagine our cities and communities. It is an opportunity for us not just to shape how our cities and communities come together, but also how we connect people to services, amenities, educational opportunities, but importantly, how we reconnect citizens across divide. If you're an urban planner, a city official, or anyone confronted or dealing with government, the obvious answer to the lack of imagination, the inertia, the red tape that you encounter is participation at every level. If you're able to introduce participation in the thinking and the shaping of the policy, you'll be able to build coalitions that are motivated beyond the 3-year cycle, beyond the political will, but to the solution that awaits all of us in our cities and communities. I think for many of you, participation might feel like a cumbersome activity. It might feel as if we're just adding another layer or another leg to the work. But if participation is introduced in all our projects, not only are you able to secure the solution's viability, but you're also able to ensure that agency within those communities leverages themselves in support of those projects. So not only will you have a really meaningful solution in your community and city, but you'll have ownership that is shared, responsibility that is shared, and accountability that is shared. And that's what we need. A lack of infrastructure and financing seems sort of as an inconsequential issue. So all of us are confronted by mega issues across the continent. And when we go to the micro level within our cities and communities, we often think the financing is the last issue we should be worried about. But the big challenge here is that when we are driven by 3-year cycles or 5-year election terms, we're driven by very narrow, immediate issues. We aren't driven by the larger question that we should be asking. And that question is, how do our cities and communities come together? How do they confront issues of climate change? How do they confront issues of resilience? And importantly, if we are able to really invest in that collective future, then we need to develop means in order to look beyond a 5-year cycle and begin the planning, not just of policy, but also about how our communities will be shaped, whether it's on sanitation, public transport, or human settlements. And in doing this, not only will we be able to plan better, but we'll be able to build better. Linked to proper thinking and planning that takes a long-term view is the prioritization of funding. Instead of introducing bus systems because they've worked in Bogota, we'll be able to introduce meaningful non-motorized transport solutions in communities that actually need it, thereby meeting the needs of a community, but also the long-term needs of that community by introducing the right type of public transport mode, the right type of public policy intervention, matching both the thinking and the planning with the necessary money. If you are not thinking about the future, if you're not thinking about long-term planning, if you're not thinking about the appropriate systems and public policy interventions, not only are you failing communities and cities across the continent, but collectively we are failing the continent. 15 million South Africans each day are transported on minibus taxis. 15 million South Africans are taken to opportunities, amenities, government services. 15 million more South Africans than our formal transport system can sustain or enable. Millions of Africans are being moved by informal systems that are somehow forced by our governments to adopt formal corporate structures that don't necessarily serve or enable them to do their actual work, but really just makes the means of communication easier for government to speak to them. This provocation has highlighted 3 main legs as to why public transport isn't working, but also why our communities and cities aren't working. Those might seem like insurmountable issues and insurmountable challenges, but in fact, they are opportunities. It's an opportunity for us not just to reimagine how we work, how we come together, how we move people, but importantly about how we can reshape our cities and communities, not just for sustainability, not just to meet the next global pandemic, but rather about how we come together as people in those communities and rise.